Our ancient ancestors understood that the seasonal cycles of the earth, the moon and the planets were a mirror of human cycles of experience. Death was accepted as part of the natural world, simply another transition of the wheel of life. Our relationship with our ancestors begin during our birth. As we are born into a family, we are protected and guided by those that came before us. When I was pregnant with my children, this became really apparent to me of some of the experiences I had when I was a child. My daughter, when she was born, who was my eldest, I was very aware of the presence of Terry's, my husband's family. And we were very close. Terry's family were very close to each other, but I noticed that her grandfather and a great aunt was very present. And this was during the birth and then after the birth. And what I found is that as my daughter grew up, her connection with Terry's family was very close. She always felt an affinity with being English, loved going to see his family. And even today, she has this real connection with her father. I have two other children. So my son, my middle son, was born in Scotland and his name's Ossian. And what I found with him, I was dreaming a great deal during my pregnancy about my Hungarian family, because my father's side of the family are Hungarian. And it always came in the dream. There was always this gentleman with a big heavy jacket and a hat that was very typical of the 1950s. I always felt very warm, very safe, and he used to come in my dreams to say, you know, you're going to have one of our children. And I used to think one of our children meant one of my children. But what I realised when he was born, his affinity with my father was we used to all be very amused about how similar he was, his personality, his temperament, where he used to get very hot-headed and kind of get very angry and then be very warm and affectionate. And I realised, looking at the photographs of my Hungarian family, it was very apparent that I could distinguish those that came to support my children from the ancestral stories. I realised very strongly that if my children have these ancestral guardians from different sides of the family, I was very aware that if at any time my daughter was sick or unwell or she was troubled, I knew that I could actually just do a prayer or call upon her ancestral guardians, and I noticed they did bring an energy of comfort and peace and kindness. When people come to see me, this whole communication between myself and my client is also connected with their ancestral guardians, their parents, grandparents. They also enter into the session because they want to be able to support the person that's living, because being on the other side, they are able to see a lot of their complications, their attachments, the difficulties that they're having, and they do normally offer some great support. They're very interesting. You do not need to be psychic or see them to actually know that you have a relationship with them. So gradually I explained to all my children that if you are ever feeling in need to get support or kind of you're feeling afraid, you know, the ancestors are there also. They're there as spiritual support, not just, you know, just photographs and memories.
The ancestors are a very, very interesting topic, because we conduct every year, and have done for goodness knows how long, ancestral workshops and retreats where we have people come and congregate and they join in, and what they're looking at is their ills, they're looking at their physical disposition, their spiritual, their emotional disposition, why this happened to me, all that sort of stuff. Of course, people are more concerned with themselves than they are with the ancestors, which is quite natural, because we're living in this life and we're having to try and feel as safe as we possibly can, comfortable in our own skin, try to get relationships that work, try to have a happy family, try and make everything safe. There's enough troubles in the world which are coming to, with paying the mortgage, meeting bills, things like that, keeping up with the Joneses, having the various stuff that is a weight around our shoulders. This is human life. And I think it's important to talk about the people you know, because the family members, the people who have passed on before you, you were brought up with them, and so to know them is to understand them. You understand what they were like in life, and so when you see them in death, you can make a comparison. So look into the history, find it important while you have the opportunity, because time passes so quickly, and before you know it, there's a different generation come along, and the older generation isn't with you anymore. It's gone. And by then it's too late to ask questions.
After the retreat, the first retreat I did, I went to ask my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, because he did know my paternal grandfather, and said, did you know whether he was a healer, or, did you know anything of his background? And he said, yes, your grandfather was a healer and he did it undercover. And his mother was a rainmaker in the culture that, she came from, because she was Black. And so that's how I found it. I didn't know that my grandfather was a healer. I never knew that growing up. And that was really interesting. And during that experience as well, because we had to help heal with other people, I started picking up things which I'd never done before. And Terry kept saying to me, you've done this before. I'm like, no, I've not done anything like this. And it's like, it's obviously in your lineage, you've definitely been a healer. And my development started from there, and it literally went like a roller coaster. From not being able to feel anything to started feeling stuff, being able to look at items and analyze them. And within 2 years, I was able to start channeling.
The ancestral continuum is understanding who came before us. Some of the work that I think is very important is to actually discover who they are. I always begin the whole program, Ancestral Connection, with, first of all, I say, let's just look at your father. Or your mother, it doesn't matter, no favoritism. So we look at your father, and let's look at his journey when he was born, what was happening during his birth, and what was happening during his growing up years. Now, history has a huge influence on the family story. So which culture, was it war-torn? So looking back through the family tree, I realised there were different personality, different issues. So I always say to people, never stop with the grandparents if you can. Find out where they lived, why they're still in the same community, did they move away, what did they occupy themselves with, what are their talents, who moved to America, because there was a whole period from 1850s onwards, or 1830s really, where there was lots of changes within the world, lots of communities moving around. All these influences, again, it's like the family tree starts to come from you, and you sort of draw up, you think, my goodness, all these characters, all these that got married, had children, were there any losses? So pinning all these stories, you think, what's the point of understanding all of that? And I'm here now trying to move forward. So that's very good, but often the things that we are subjected to as we're moving forward, and our behaviour and the way that we sometimes feel very challenged or traumatised by these challenges, often it's a lot to do with what's happened before, how responses of how we deal with what's happened before.